You will get. All right. Hello and welcome back to the Functional Effect Optimization Group. I am Coach Sarah,
Dr. T.
and we, as always, are going to be coming to you with some insights and knowledge. But tonight we're going to be focusing in on stress and not just like what is stress, but the cumulative effect that stress can have on the
Hmm.
body. And I think that there's many of us that will be watching this video who will be able to resonate with some of the things that we cover that fall under that stress response umbrella. And we're going to talk about how to recognize that stress response in yourself and what is it that's actually happening that causes this snowball response to start happening in the body. Um, so, this is for the person that feels like they're showing up, feels like they're putting the work in, and feels like they still are at a place where they're kind of stuck spinning their wheels and having symptoms that they can't really figure out. Oftentimes, these are the same people that will go to their doctor and get lab work done, and their lab work comes back relatively normal.
Yeah.
So, if this sounds like you and you feel like your body is not being cooperative, a lot of the things that we're going to cover tonight might resonate with you on a very deep level. And we're going to talk about why that happens and why it's not a lack of discipline, but rather a lack of recovery and how you can work towards getting yourself back on a track that allows your body to start responding in the way you want to. So, the first thing I want to talk about tonight is that frustration loop that I referenced, that thought process of like I'm doing everything right, but my body's not doing what I want it to do. What does that look like typically in a person that comes to us that says they feel like they're doing everything right, but their body's not responding? What is that person's body typically saying to
Well, when
them?
when you when I do an assessment on in somewhere or someone's in my office,
Yeah.
I could break it down to probably like one phrase. It's like tired but wired. They are exhausted. They're so tired. They're trying to work out. They're trying to do it. It's not like their lack of effort is not an issue, but they're just so tired. But yet they feel like I can't even sleep well. They're just they're in it. I get it. They're in it, right? And so that's typically what you see, and they're just like they're not recovering. They're struggling. They're tired, and that's generally what I'm seeing in the office.
And when you are somebody that is continually putting forth more effort, but not seeing a return on that investment, that frustration that you're experiencing can start to turn into a level of self-doubt that gets you questioning what you're doing. And the thing is that it's not a problem with your workout, likely, and it might not even be a problem with your nutrition. But when we get down to brass tacks, the nervous system operates under the guise of cumulative stress. And stress is something that sometimes we have a hard time defining in our own life. What things we're doing are stressful versus what things we're doing are
It's a,
recovery
yeah, it's a
based.
tough one to measure.
Well, and one thing that there's this saying, the dose becomes the poison.
Yeah.
So for each person who is watching this, the same one thing. So let's use workouts as an example.
Hmm.
There's, say we're doing the same 30-minute workout. Every person watching this video is going to have a different window in which their body is going to need to recover.
Hmm.
And so oftentimes I feel like people downplay, disregard, or just maybe aren't aware of just how stressful some of the things that they are doing on a habitual basis, like training and working out, which are relatively positive things by nature. But if you aren't recovering well from those workouts, they start to become a cumulative stressor that will wreak havoc on your health.
Hmm.
So even positive things like working out can become part of the cumulative stress that is adding to your health woes.
Yeah, people, it's hard to, your body doesn't see it as like good stress, bad stress always.
Doesn't
It's
discriminate.
just stress
Right.
upon your nervous system.
So let's talk about what's actually happening when we talk about this stress response in the body. My whole goal here is to keep it really simple. So let's talk about the two main branches of the nervous
Mhm.
system. We have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is
Rest and
your,
digest.
yeah, rest and
Yep.
digest. Very easy way to think about it. And then you have your sympathetic nervous system.
Fight or flight.
Right. So when you are, when your body is responding to something that it perceives as stressful, that is when your body goes into fight or flight,
Hmm.
depending on the person and depending on your history and upbringing and all kinds of biopsychosocial cues. Your nervous system can be primed to be very cool, calm, and collected and low responsive, or you can be a little bit more like me and you can have a nervous system that's primed to be a little bit more responsive to a lot of things. And so my body has a tendency to perceive a lot of things as stressful, whereas Tyler's body is a little bit more resilient, and we see his needs for recovery looking a little bit different than mine. And again, each person watching this, your needs are going to look a little
Yeah.
bit different too, but the whole point here is that when you are in chronic stress, your body is in put into a state of like a survival mode, if you will, chronically activated, which is going to cause a cascade of negative hormonal repercussions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, one of the big ones that you're going to hear people talking about in the world of stress is cortisol.
Hmm.
And it's not that you shouldn't have any cortisol, because let's be very clear, cortisol is necessary to
It's
survive.
very important.
It's extremely important.
You need it.
But what is the true problem when you have somebody who's chronically stressed when it
Well,
comes to their
I'd
cortisol?
probably say there's probably two issues there. There's the person who has chronically elevated stress levels throughout the time. So what should happen is cortisol levels are high in the morning and then they should go down and further as the day goes on. So in a better case scenario, it's more flatlined, which isn't good, but the worst case scenario is a paradoxical, which means you actually are flipping it and you're going upward as the day goes on, and that can be devastating to someone's health.
And he referenced the person at the beginning when we started talking who is tired but wired at night. That is going to be the typical person who we see that has a flipped cortisol curve.
Hmm.
And we're not here to diagnose anybody, right? But we are here to bring awareness to the fact that when you start to have these tired but wired feelings at 8, 9 o'clock at night when you should be winding down for the day and then wake up exhausted after a full night's sleep, those are signals.
Hmm.
That's your body trying to tell you something. And having a proper cortisol curve that rises and peaks in the first 60 minutes of waking, that's what helps you get out of bed, get moving, get mobilized, and get motivated to attack the day.
Yeah, like it should be going up, 5, 6, 7 in the morning, but there's people who a lot of times it's 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's popping high, and that's waking you up, and
And so
that's a
we
little complicated because there's a lot of stuff going on there.
right, so we haven't even touched on that yet. So that is also the person who is tired but wired is likely also the same person who might struggle with waking up between that 1 and 3
Yeah.
a.m. spot. So a lot of you who are listening to this might also be struggling with that. That is another red flag signal
Okay.
that your body's trying to give you that your cumulative stress load has become too high.
Yeah, and then so typically when we're getting deeper and having conversations with clients and patients, one of the things, and this is Sarah's very good at this, is we get into because it is deeper and most people don't want to talk about it right away. But when you get into digestive and GI issues, that is a very telling situation of what's going on in your nervous system. Because remember, you have more neurons in your gut than you do your brain. So it's called your second brain. So the connection between your mental stress and your digestive stress is almost like it's guaranteed to be together.
So when we see the person that's struggling with chronic anxiety, low grade, unexplainable, nothing's going on in their world that would be causing this feeling, but they have this impending sense of doom. This is again the same person who is likely overloading their system with these chronic stressors. And what those stressors are for each person are very subjective because it can be anything from environmental stressors to physiological stressors, like we referenced the workouts. We could be talking about social stressors, like going through a change in your family, going through your kids going through a rough time. That can be stressful for parents. I mean, and emotional stress, hands down, without a doubt, is the biggest driver
Yeah.
of stress in the body. So when you're going through any type of emotional stress, having an expectation that that's not going to be affecting you physically is truly a naive way of thinking about
Yeah.
stress because it is a trickle down effect. So, especially when you're experiencing a heavy emotional load, it's a really important time to be considering upping your recovery and being more intentional about eliminating unnecessary stressors from your increased load.
And that's where we talk about like just being consistent and
Yeah.
but like not being perfect, right? So in those situations, we're saying, you know what's probably a better idea than hitting the gym super hard that day and trying to get close to failure, but because you want to get that anger out, probably a better idea might be go for a walk outside and do some gentle recovery work and do some just good quality movement because again, it is your nervous system that is mainly affected here.
And so if you feel like your body's resisting you and you're doing all the right things, like you're the person who's working out 3, 4 times a week and being active and eating well and all the things, your body's not resisting you from getting results. It's protecting you and it's slowing everything down in an attempt to get you to slow down. And it's looking at what your body's doing as signals, as little taps on the shoulder of like, hey, I need you to pay attention and I need you to listen to what I'm trying to tell you
Mhm.
before you end up getting hit over the head with the proverbial 2x4 of some major medical issue.
There's usually always whispers through like the like before someone has a major medical issue. There's
Absolutely.
months before there's whispers that people ignore.
If not
Oh, that
years.
just it could be years too. Yeah, they just go like, oh no worries, nothing. Oh, it came and it went. You know, it could be like, oh, they're getting hives, right?
Sure.
Like they're having major histamine responses. Well, there's definitely major stressors on the body with there, and there could be tons of examples with GI problems
Yeah.
or people feeling like insomnia. Tons of reasons.
So, whatever it is that is adding to your personal stress load, whether it's something in the physiological realm, like really hard workouts, or a decrease in sleep for whatever reason. If you've had disrupted sleep patterns, again, next to emotional stress, disrupted sleep probably has to be one of the biggest stress amplifiers out there.
Yeah, because sleep can, I mean, we call sleep master habit. If you have one thing you want to focus on to make it the biggest change in your life, and it does move the needle the absolute most, and it does take work, it's get better sleep. It can change your hormones, it can change your blood sugar levels, it can change your digestive. I mean, the list can go on. And I could preach about this for like an hour, but get your sleep right. It'll fix a lot of stuff when it comes to your nervous system.
Absolutely. So, as always, one of the goals that we have during these chats is to give you an actionable framework to start thinking about how you need to approach your own journey with stress. while we are going to provide a link to a really helpful stress audit. Tonight's goal is to just get you to start to think about stress differently. And the first step in that process is to recognize that stress is a physiological response. So this is the three R's that we're going to go over tonight, but recognize that stress is a physiological response to environment. And each of us have a different tuning to that stress response.
Hmm.
Some of us, like I said, are tuned really tightly and respond really quickly to stressors or what we perceive as things as stressors. And some of us have very low reactivity and high resilience to stress. That also changes. And I think it's important to note this, that when women go into our midlife season,
Hmm.
that resiliency decreases significantly due to hormonal fluctuation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and in men too, and differently, it's not the same. But as men get older into their 40s and 50s, and as testosterone levels are dropping, because what makes men more resilient in overall and why they need generally one less hour of sleep than women is testosterone. Um, Men are built to handle a little bit more load, and they need a little bit less rest. It's not like it's tons more; it's about an hour different, but cumulatively that can make a big difference. So for men, yeah,
But how many guys in today's society walk around with suboptimal testosterone?
it's a lot.
So, keeping that in mind, there is this aspect of like if a guy is at optimal hormonal levels, he might have good stress resiliency. But what we know to be true is that most men walk around with suboptimal testosterone
Yes.
levels because, and we know this to be true, that testosterone levels in the United States are dropping at the rate of about 1% a year.
Yep. Every year it goes down 1% in men.
And so if we continue at the rate we're at in the United States, we will by the year 2050,
Yeah.
we will be living in an infertile country.
Yeah. You'd have to go on testosterone just to become fertile.
Well, to have normal levels.
To have normal levels, which doesn't mean you're actually going to be fertile though.
No. So it becomes this conundrum of what can we do to rectify this situation beyond, looking at HRT and these pharmaceutical ways to get hormones level. It's actually managing your stress, and it's controlling the controllables and being able to audit your own stress load and where you might be incurring more stress than you think. And so if you are listening to this and you are like, yeah, that sounds like me, I do have a really helpful stress audit, and I'm going to be putting the link to that stress audit in the show notes for the video for tonight that we will be putting out on the replay. So you will have access to that worksheet. You can do that really helpful stress audit, and it will help you kind of zoom in to the places that you might need to be addressing. And I think it's always worth addressing that second step once you recognize that stress is something that does need to be addressed on a global level and that it is a physiological response, is learning how to properly regulate. And that's the second R that we're going to talk about. So when we talk about regulation, we address first like master habit sleep. If you're not mastering your sleep and haven't learned how to master your sleep, that's definitely going to be the first thing that we're going to
Mhm.
recommend that you do. And there's a variety of ways to address that one, and a variety of routes to the reason why you might not be sleeping well. So we will in another call dive more into the
Yeah.
sleep hygiene component, but sleep hygiene can be one call in and of
Yeah,
itself.
that's
Um,
gigantic. It's like 3 calls.
but a really powerful way to regulate the nervous system and on any budget, right? Second way is to be able to look at and assess that stress load. So utilizing that assessment form that we're going to be dropping in the show notes, that is my second piece of advice, because if you can start with an awareness of what is in your stress bucket,
Hmm. Well,
then yeah.
and I think so many people they minimize their stress load. They
Yeah.
minimize it. They vert last. Oh, well, how are you feeling today? What's going on? I'm fine. I hear that all the time.
Well, or even what does your stress look like? And it's almost as if you're questioning their character.
Or all their weaknesses.
Whereas stress is not a personality flaw. Stress is something that needs to be managed, just like our diet needs to be managed. If we have a goal of gaining muscle, if we're not specific with knowing what our intake and output is like, we're not going to gain the muscle we desire. Same thing is true with your stress. If
Hmm.
you don't understand where your stress is coming from, you're never going to be able to manage it properly. So, downplaying, disregarding, and minimizing the things that cause stress is only putting you at a disadvantage for being able to manage it.
Well, and you're
For
not, and if you can't recognize it, and you can't talk about it,
right.
and then it's kind of just you end up just kind of letting. I talk about like your body keeps a score. So when you internalize that stress of it, it will come out one way or another.
Oh, absolutely.
It could be an explosive, like yelling at somebody could be one, or like having major GI issues. It's a lot, there's a ton of things that it can be.
And on that note, when you're looking at all of the different ways to help your body regulate and recover, it's important to note that you have to do the things that work for you, and the things that work for you might not be the things that work for the next person.
Mhm.
And being able to take a personal inventory of what your tools are going to look like in your tool belt are a really important part of this process of like controlling those controllables. But the third R in these three R's is the rebuilding process. So, realistically, when you have somebody that is trying to get better at managing their stress, and you know that they've got the sleep component nailed,
Mhm.
what would you say is the next most important element for them to be addressing?
Yeah, so I probably say it's two things, but if the first one that comes to mind right away is their nutrition. What exactly are you eating? Because that's your fuel system.
Well, and what would you say? Of course, I'm asking him a leading question here, right? But what would you say for, especially for our primary clientele, which
Hmm.
is the midlife person?
Hmm.
What would you say is probably the number one contributor that we see to poor recovery?
Okay, so it's two things, and it's under eating, can very common, or we call chaotic eating,
Right. So
which
let's
is
explain chaotic.
chaotic.
Under eating is pretty self-explanatory, but let's explain the idea of chaotic
Yeah, so
eating.
chaotic eating is going to be one day you're eating two meals and each meal is like 500 calories, and then the next day you're having four meals and those are going to be much larger meals and they're eating 3,000 calories or something like that. And so there's no consistency across the board. That's pretty tough.
Really common to see for the person who gets really swept up in the day. And, one day they made the time to eat and ended up overeating
Yeah.
because the day before they went almost the whole day without eating anything because they were running on adrenaline and vibes.
Yeah. Well, and typically when you go through that chaotic eating, you're eating very emotionally through like the stressors of life and you're like I'm just so hungry right now and this is what's quick and easy because there's no plan, there's no system, all the stuff that we talked about in the last month or two, everything kind of falls to the level of your system.
And when you eat chaotically, it also wreaks havoc on your digestion.
Yeah.
So having continuity and consistency with your nutrition is a really, really important aspect of better managing your stress load.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that your nutrition needs to look perfect. And for a lot of people, it actually means that you need to be increasing your calories. Because if you have stayed in a deficit for too long and you're asking your body to perform, eventually that will lead to this chronic dysregulation that we're talking about.
Yeah.
because you can't stay in a deficit forever. And most people don't even realize how many calories they need to be eating in order to be
Yeah.
functioning properly. I mean, I'm learning some valuable lessons personally right now on how many calories I need to be eating. And I'm not going to talk about specifics on the call tonight, but you would probably be amazed if you knew how many calories I was consuming right now. And that's just to maintain my weight. But so it's really important if you're an active person who works out regularly that you assess where am I at with that?
Yeah, and this starts from an early age too. And so I work with a lot of swimmers and female and male swimmers, and from an early age, like that is one of the most cardiovascular intensive sports. They swim an insane amount, and their schedules are crazy. And what you end up seeing by the time this is really more common in girls than males, but by the time they're about 17, these girls are burnt out. They are toast. They are so tired. And I believe the number one reason, one, it's a lot of work. Two, they are so underfed for these because these girls swim probably 10 months out of the year. They're in the pool 5 to 6 days a week, 10 months out of the year. They are so underfed. They probably only eat on average 2,000 calories a day, and they are easily burning 35. And it catches up to them, and they're so tired, they're so burnt, and they want nothing to do with swim by the time they're about a junior in high school.
Because the messaging that's out there for a lot of these girls is eat 2000 calories a day. And for some, we even get the, well, I heard I'm supposed to eat 1200 calories a day if I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you that unless you are a completely sedentary human being or you have a very low starting body weight, 1200 calories is appropriate for my 5-year old.
Yeah.
And he probably consumes a little bit more than that a day. You need to be eating more than that
Hmm.
in order to support your active body
Most,
and to support a balanced nervous
yeah.
system, more importantly.
Yeah. And so to kind of going off that, the other idea was, and if you had told me this years ago, I'd have been like, no way. I believe breathing has one of the strongest indicators of like being able to manage stress more than anything. It manages movement, it manages stress, it manages GI function. It's I at no point like going through fitness and chiropractic school and
Mhm.
all the stuff I did, I was like, no way. But now, probably in the last 5 years, it's the fundamental thing of human movement is breathing. And I could talk very long time about this.
Well, and so the one thing that we're going to have you guys walk away with tonight is a tool that we want you to use because when we talk about the ability to get into the rest and digest portion of the nervous system, the most important time for you to do that is when you eat.
Hmm.
And so, what I am going to challenge everybody who's watching this to do is for 2 minutes before your next meal, take time to do some belly breathing. And if you're not familiar with what belly breathing is, you can start out by having a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly in order to give yourself some biofeedback. And all I want you to do is take a deep breath in through your nose and feel your belly and chest rise as you do. And slowly exhale. And try to make your exhale last longer than your inhale. No need to get specific about the counting, but if you can set a timer for 2 minutes and do that prior to your next meal, it's going to have the desired effect on your nervous system that we want. And it doesn't cost a penny. It's
Hmm.
accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter where you are. You can do it in the presence of anyone in any situation. And it's can be the one thing to start your journey with really working on controlling your stress response. Because if you go into a meal dysregulated, talk to me about the problems with that.
Oh, well, okay. So going into a meal, well, most people, first off, they eat way too fast. Like most people, it's times an issue. So they're gonna go boom. They're eating probably with 2, 3 minutes. A lot of people
And they're probably
they eat.
also trying to multitask while they eat, like watching something, reading emails, answering text.
Yeah. So instantly our heart rate's higher. Our nervous system is elevated up into sympathetics. And really, we should be in probably the most relaxed state possible to get the best digestion we can get. So, if you eat really peel, like if you've ever eaten super fast and you're like, oh man, my stomach does not feel good, because you weren't in a parasympathetic state. You're probably in a very sympathetic state when you're doing it, and it end up going to go two ways. It's going to go either you're going to be constipated through it possibly, or it's going to go through you really fast.
Or if you've ever been the person who has eaten your meal and then you get a wave of nausea immediately following, there's a really good chance that your nervous system was pretty heightened and dysregulated going into your meal and that your body is not doing a very good job digesting. So there's a lot of signs and signals that you were in a heightened state going into your meal, but they all have to do with distress.
Mhm.
So it can be ranging from anything to gassiness, burping, bloating, just to straight nausea to, I mean, all the way to actually throwing up.
Yep.
So it can vary, but if you were experiencing digestive distress on any level, what could be the harm in working on breathing for 2 minutes before your next meal and seeing if it helps?
Yeah. So this is an extreme example because I do this because of the sport I do. So when you're ultra running and you're on trail, people like when do you eat, right? Because you're these are very long races, so you have to eat. So what you end up what's happening is you always eat on the uphill when you're hiking up, you never do it on the down, because the reason for it, it's very difficult jostling to your internal organs when you're running flat and running downhill. So you always eat on the up. That's just a more extreme example of it, though.
Yeah. So, all in all, what we want you to take away from tonight is being able to do this self audit of where your stressors are coming from, which again, we're going to provide you with that stress audit and recognizing that stress is this cumulative response to your environment and that we're all tuned a little bit differently. So, your stress response is going to be different than your best friend's stress response and different from your kiddo's stress response, but recognizing when you are starting to veer out of balance, that is something that we can all take some time to notice and name when that's happening, because you know what your baseline feels like. And if you don't know what your baseline feels like, even more so of a reason to do this stress audit.
Mhm.
Because if you're somebody who says, I don't know, when somebody asks you how you feel, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but there's a really good chance that you might be burned out. And if you are somebody who is struggling with burnout or feeling like you are resonating with it, everything that we're talking about tonight, I want to leave you with this. If you're feeling stuck, it's not because you're broken, it's because you have a standard operating system that needs some upgrading. And you're operating from a place of stress, not from safety. But you're not alone either, because this is the normal for many people. But it doesn't mean that it's what you have to settle for. Your body, when it doesn't feel safe, will always prioritize survival over progress. But when you're trying to back your way out of stress, the goal isn't to push harder. The goal is to create an environment internally and externally where your body can actually start responding to the efforts that you're putting forth. Next week, we're going to talk about what that actually looks like in real time, because we are fresh out of time for tonight, because we want to get you guys to bed at a reasonable time, because sleep is important and we cannot stress that enough. And we want to show you next week what the way forward looks like. Because now that you have come to this place with us where you are recognizing that stress is a physiological response, all you need from here is a way forward. And we're going to provide that for you. So we're really excited to be with you next week.
Mhm.
And we, as always, are grateful for you guys watching, whether you're watching live or watching on the replay. And until next time, remember, you deserve to feel your best.
Good night, guys. There we go.